Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It is Angela. Um, I've been wanting to do this video for a while. I just did a walkthrough of my latest Oracle deck. I'm like, well, I got the camera and everything out. Might as well do this video now. So this is the scary ghost story that I have that I've been wanting to put on here for a while. I've already done a vlog on it like 3 years ago. And I can link that below if you guys want to read it. It's called Brain Center Bust. So I think I'm going to title this one Friday Night Ghost Story. But here goes. So it was about 9 years ago. My youngest son was 4, I think, and my oldest was, I think, 11. And I was going, I'm sorry, it's late and my brain is going to mush. And I'm not trying to, I'm trying to pull up some music here. Sorry about that. So, because this story freaks me out every time I tell it. So, I wanted some positive vibe music on here. So, it was 9 years ago. I had a family reunion in Branson, Missouri. My dad's side of the family, there's 17 of them. Both my grandparents have passed, but every 2 years they have a family reunion. I have this one aunt that for 2 years is coordinating it and getting things together. And every time they have a reunion, a family member, they go down the line and a family member gets to pick the next location. So this year in particular, my dad had gotten to pick, and he picked Branson because I live 4 hours away from it. So he knew I would be able to go. So I went online and looking for coupons and stuff, and actually found if you did a timeshare tour, it was like an hour-long tour, you got pretty much a free stay for 4 days and 3 nights. No, 5 days and 4 nights at this hotel, and all you had to pay was like a certain amount of tax, and it was like literally $15 is what I paid. And we paid before we even got there. But we left on a Friday afternoon. It's a 4-hour drive, so we left on a Friday afternoon and got there probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock. But we couldn't check into our hotel till Saturday, so we stayed at this like rinky-dink $20 a night hotel just to get some sleep until we could check in the next morning. So the next morning we check in, or we get up, go to our hotel, and it is gorgeous. It's got 3 buildings. It looks like little castles. They're all named like Guinevere and Lancelot, and I think that was 2 of them, and then there was a third one. I forgot what the name of it was. So we go check in, and excuse me, we basically had to meet my dad because they have a huge Titanic replica built, and it's like a museum. You could go in, you're handed a boarding pass, or and at the end you find out if you're like one of the deceased that passed, or if you actually were able to get off the Titanic. Pretty neat. But we basically checked in, threw everything in our hotel room, and left. Everything about it was gorgeous. It was a very upscale, beautiful hotel, and I could not believe we only paid $15 for the week we were staying there. So, my dad's where most of the family was staying was in this huge house on the other end of Branson. It's about a good 45-minute drive from where we were on the strip. We're all pretty much on the strip of the main strip in Branson, where they have like slides on the strip, and there's all the shopping malls and everything right there. And we're probably 4 or 5 blocks from it, so it wasn't that bad. Traffic wasn't bad. We met up with my dad, got to meet the family, went out and hung out at their house for the day. Came back. It was like 10:30 and 11 o'clock at night. We were exhausted. We hadn't ate really. I had no AC in my vehicle at the time, so it was mid-July. So we were all like soaked in sweat. We all stunk. We all needed a bath. And I went in to give my youngest a bath. I started the water, and within seconds, the water coming out was steaming. You could see it steaming out of the wall as well. It was so hot, and it was the cold water. So I called maintenance, and they're like, yeah, for some reason the pipes have been switched. We're going to have to, there's no more rooms in this building. We're going to have to switch you to building 2. So here we are, 11:30 at night. Got our bags packed up. We're moving over to building 2. And I can tell you, the second I stepped over the threshold, I felt like someone was watching me. It had a very different feel than the 3rd building I'd been in. It was not a good feeling. And mind you, this is way before I ever started my spiritual journey, years before. But I knew someone was there watching us, and it wasn't somebody that everybody could see physically. And it wasn't a good intention that they had at all. So we get in, we're crossing the threshold, and I'm like immediately looking around for cameras, anything to explain this creepy, overwhelming feeling I just got. And as we progressed to the room, the feeling kept getting worse and worse and worse. We step onto the elevator, and I'm like looking for cameras in the elevator. We get up to our floor, step off on the floor, and I'm just like, and I asked my husband at that point, I'm like, do you feel that? And he's like, what? I was like, it feels like somebody's watching us. He's like, well, there's probably hidden cameras. I'm like, well, you would see something resembling a camera. There's nothing to explain a camera anywhere. And we get to our room, and it was like walking into someone else's bubble of personal space. I could almost hear the pop of this threshold I was walking into that wasn't something of this plane. And I almost had a panic attack. I don't have panic attacks. I almost had a panic attack. The feeling was so overwhelming that we were walking into something horrible. And just this overwhelming, creepy, skin-crawling feeling. And I almost passed out. And my husband's like, are you okay? Like, I'm like, this is not a good burn. If I had been anywhere in my spiritual journey like I am now, I would have chosen a different hotel. I would have chosen something different, because I knew the second we walked into that room, and I'm like over there trying to breathe because I could feel this pop of energy around us that was all completely negative, that we need to go. We should not be here. And it's now, in retrospect, looking back, it feels like almost there was somebody invisibly screaming, go away, leave now, please run. And I was nowhere near, didn't even think about a spiritual journey at that point. It was so long ago. I did believe in ghosts. I've had too many experiences not to believe in them when I was younger. So I knew there was some level of something going on there that was paranormal. And I didn't like it. I was like, no. But, it was late at night. My kids were half asleep. We hadn't really ate. So I got everybody fed, got everybody bathed, went to sleep. Didn't think of anything of it. Woke up the next morning. We were okay. I was like, okay. Obviously, just me being overtired. So the next day we get up, it's Saturday or Sunday. We get up, we go to meet my dad. We hang out with the family all day. Again, it was another day of hanging out with family, doing games at their place. And about 10:30 at night, we came back. We stopped at Wendy's on the way, got some food, sat and ate. Everybody bathed again, went to sleep. No problem. And I didn't feel that creepy feeling except for that first, when we initially walked into the room. It was overwhelming. But at that point, 2 days later, or the next day, the next night, I was fine in the room. I wasn't feeling any of that energy. And I don't know if I had just closed it off or what, but I was not feeling anything. So Monday rolls around. We decided to go to Silver Dollar City, which is a huge theme park, if you don't know. They've got a cave on site. You can go down in the cave and everything. It's really, really neat. It's very Old West style pilgrimage kind of theme park. And so we went there from open to close. We were there all day, all night, or like they closed at 10. I think they opened at 9. We were there at 9. We went through the cave. That took a couple hours. Went through all the rides. Had fun with other family members as well. It was a huge day. So we come back to the hotel. It's again like 10 o'clock at night. Everybody needs a shower again. Everybody's ate. Everybody goes to sleep. It was about probably midnight, almost 1 o'clock in the morning when I finally passed out. And the way the room was set up was you walk in, and to the right there was like a half wall there. You walk to the right and there's a bed against the wall. It was a full-size bed, and then wedged in between the bed was like a little nightstand that had like a clock on it and a lamp, and then of course a Bible in the drawer. And then the other side was the bed against the other wall where there was a small window. So my oldest, who was 11 at the time, chose the far wall on that first bed. And then my youngest, I put him on the inside next to where I would be on this bed. So if he needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, or he got, had a bad dream, fell out of bed, which is high occurrence for my 4-year-old at the time, I would be there. And then my husband was against the window. So we fall asleep. I think the last time I looked at the clock, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was like already out of it by then. So the next thing I know, I wake up to a loud boom. And I knew instantly my son had fallen out of bed. And somehow, because the nightstand was wedged right up against the frame of both beds, he was somehow wedged in between the nightstand and the bed. I kind of wriggled him out. It's pitch dark. You can't see your hand in front of your face. It's that dark. I kind of wiggled him out of bed, kind of feeling around. And then he was kind of whimpering because he was, had hit the stand. So I kind of sat Indian style in the middle of the floor and kind of dragged him into my lap and held him, kind of trying to rock him back to sleep. The second I pulled him into my lap, and the only way I can describe this is it was literally like somebody threw a cloak or a jacket of fear and just wrapped me in it. And it was just this overwhelming, like, terrifying fear. And initially I was like, oh my God, like, what is happening? And it took me a few seconds because I'm rocking him back and forth. I'm in mom mode, but I'm also feeling this overwhelming. It literally felt like somebody had threw something on me that was fear-based, completely terrified, horrible, terrifying fear. And as I'm rocking him, because I'm trying to be calm, I have this epiphany moment that it's not my fear. I'm feeling someone else's fear. And that kind of calmed me down for a second. But I'm like, how can I get rid of this? How can I do away with this person's fear, whoever this is? And as I'm rocking him, I realize he's falling back asleep. He's snoring in my lap. So I get up. I kind of slowly slide him back into the bed, feeling my way around because it's so dark. Cover him up. And I'm still feeling this fear. Just the most horrible fear you can ever imagine. Like from a horror movie kind of fear. And I stood up. And the curtain was kind of open. So at that point, a little bit of moonlight kind of cascaded in the room. So you could see a little bit. And I stand up and I'm just standing there like, what do I do with this? And as soon as I said that to myself, my husband, and again, the only way I can describe this is that he flew. It was like he got up in one fluid motion, jumped across the bed, and landed at my feet on the floor, standing straight up, screaming bloody murder at me in another language. And I will tell you right now, the only language my husband knows is English. He's born and raised right here in Kansas City, Missouri. He doesn't know, he speaks very hick Southern styles most of the time. Most of the time, he doesn't know proper English, let alone another language. And I'm just like, what the hell is happening right now? And it was almost like, because the way he landed was right at the end of my toes, it's like there was an invisible line barrier between us that he could not cross. And I felt that. And so I'm like, started screaming back at him, what are you doing? Stop it, stop it. Like, stop screaming. At one point, we are both screaming bloody murder, only his is in some other language. And I'm like, and we didn't have smartphones back then, or I would have totally recorded this conversation. But I was like, with the cloak of fear that was still wrapped around me, and him screaming bloody murder, blocking my way from even moving to go turn a light on or something. I was just kind of stuck in that moment, and I was like, I have no idea what's happening right now. Like, how is he screaming at me in another language? And I started smacking him, like, across the face hard. I'm like, Jason, come on, wake up. Like, I thought he was dreaming or something, sleepwalking, anything to explain what was happening, because I had no clue. And then I tell him to go turn the light on, because there was a tall lamp at the end of the first bed that he was blocking me from getting to, so I couldn't do it. And so he actually, it was almost like he hesitated for a moment, and then he went to turn the light on. I'm like, okay, this nightmare is over. No. He gets to the light, and you can see him literally reach up for the light, and then his hand drops before he turns the light on, and he walks back like he's being controlled. And he comes back to that same exact spot, like there's a very visible line there that he couldn't cross to get to me. And he starts screaming all over again, and it's like on a repeat of what he was just screaming in another language. And I'm like, what is happening? So at this point, I'm thoroughly freaked the F out, because I'm terrified for my kids, I'm terrified for myself, I'm terrified because at this point I know whatever is happening is not my husband. And I start screaming at him again to go turn the light on, because all I could think of was, let there be light, let there be light, let there be light. Light needs to come into this room and get rid of whatever's in here. And he goes to the light again, and again you see him reach for the light, and then his hand drops, and it's like, and he comes back, and he starts doing it all over again. This happened 3 times, 3 different times. He would go to the light, and then as soon as he tried to turn it on, his hand would drop, and he would come back over like he was a robot of some sort. And at this point, I'm just like, when is this nightmare going to end? Because he's screaming at the top of his lungs like bloody murder. It's like blood curdling screaming this foreign language at me. And I'm like freaking out. I'm screaming at him. I'm smacking the crap out of his face. And then all of a sudden, it's like the curtain moved and this sliver of moonlight shone right across his face and his eyes. And that's the moment I will never forget, because he was not there. Nobody was there. Whatever was staring back at me was not my husband. It wasn't his eyes anymore. It was, I don't know, can't explain it. I know it wasn't him. It was like there was nobody home. And if you've ever played with the little toy camera as a kid, and you had to click it for the slides to move from one slide to another, and it's kind of like a film, and then you would have this like black line on each slide that would go over, and sometimes it would get stuck, and you would see like a black line on the edge of the next picture. That's what happened with his eyes. Like his eyes there was nobody home. And as soon as I saw that there was nobody there, I smacked him hard as I could across the face. And you could literally see the film move and like the black line with it, and his eyes come back to himself. And that is the thing that haunts me. Because I'm like, okay, I just witnessed something leaving his body and him returning to himself. And as soon as he did that, I'm like, go turn the light on. And he went over, turned the light on, and everything, the fear I was feeling, everything instantly dissipated. It was just gone. And I still to this day have no idea what it was. I can tell you now, whatever it was, I don't think it was ever human. You can say demon, you can say animal, I don't know. It wasn't human. And I don't know what language it was speaking, because I don't speak any other language but English. I keep wanting to say that it was, I can't even remember the name of the language. Latin, but I don't know for sure. I will never know for sure, because I won't do a meditation or anything to go back to that moment, because it was that horrific. Even talking about it now, I have goosebumps, because it was traumatizing. And like I said, as soon as he turned the light on, everything went back to normal. And it was weird, because it was like he was on a robotic. He went and turned the light on, and then he just went and lay down and was asleep in seconds, like nothing had ever just happened. I went into the bathroom, curled up in the fetal position, and cried myself to sleep with the light on. And the next morning, I get up and I'm looking around, and he's asking me, "Why are you in the bathroom on the floor asleep?" And I'm like, I just kind of like, I don't know, kind of deal, because I'm kind of waiting for him to say, "Hey, what happened last night? I didn't hear anything or see anything." And I'm just like, how? And then while we were screaming at each other, I was thinking, maintenance is going to hear us. Neighbors in the next room are going to hear us screaming bloody murder at each other. They're going to call somebody. Nobody ever came. My oldest son, which still bothers me to this day, he was 11 years old, never woke up through this whole thing. My youngest that had fallen back asleep never woke back up during this whole thing. And I'm like, how is this possible? And so the next few days were very uneventful. Well, that's the thing though. When I woke up, when I heard the boom, I looked over at the clock. It was 2:30 on the dot. And it was like one of those little black alarm clocks with the beady red letters. It was almost, and I thought to myself when I saw it, it looks like demon eyes. And yeah, so to me that was demonic, whatever it was. But the next day, we had another long day. No, nothing was mentioned of this incident. Went to bed, and at 2:30 again on the dot, I had left a light on in the bathroom and left the door cracked so we could have light in that room. But 2:30 again on the dot, the next night, I woke up again, straight up out of bed, like somebody had whispered something into my ear, and I was like, what? And I look over, and it's 2:30 on the dot again. The next couple of days were very uneventful. Nothing happened. And I had prayed like I've never prayed before for God to come in and protect the room, protect my kids, protect my husband, whatever needed to be protected to protect it. And so nothing really happened after that. So the day we're leaving, I went and said goodbye to my dad, hung out with him for a couple hours, and then we were leaving town to go home. And the second we crossed, because it was still weighing on my mind, but I wasn't saying anything because my husband never mentioned anything. I'm like, nobody mentioned anything. This is crazy. So the second we crossed the city limits outside of Branson, my husband pulled over to the side of the road, and he looks at me and says, what the hell was that the other night? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, don't play dumb with me. You know something happened. And I'm like, well, what do you think happened? And he said, well, the only thing I know for sure is that for some reason you were screaming at me at the top of your lungs to go turn on the light. And every time he said, I tried 3 or 4 times, 2 or 3 times before I actually turned it on. He said, but every time I would go to the light and try to turn it on, it was like something was preventing me from doing it and would make me come back to you. That is all he remembers. He doesn't remember the screaming bloody murder in another language. And I'm just like, how is this possible? Unless he was being controlled by someone else. And so I went through the whole story with him of my version of what happened, and he was thoroughly freaked out. He was like, this is crazy. This is impossible. I'm like, yeah, it happened. Like, it happened. Something was in that room. And when I felt the fear, it was literally like a mother's fear for their child. Like someone had tried to steal my son's innocence or his essence somehow. And she was like fear because it had happened to her son. And that's the feeling I got when I was holding him and rocking him, and it was just overwhelming because it kind of ratcheted up my mom and me coming out, the mother line and me coming out, but you can't protect your kids against something that you can't see. And so we get home from Branson. We kind of talked about it a little bit all the way home. We got back. We went to his mom's house. He told her the whole story, made me tell her all of my story. It was crazy. And he was like thoroughly freaked out. You could tell he was freaked out. Nowadays, he'll tell you, I'll tell him your scary story, but he doesn't think nothing of it. It has stayed with me though for 9 years. I don't sleep without a nightlight now. I can't sleep in the total darkness. I can't do it because things come out at dark. And it's weird because when we got back home, there was things that started happening in our house. And I realized at some point that it was the mom and the little boy that had followed us home to kind of protect us and watch over us because of whatever that was that had taken over my husband. 4 or 5 years later, I found out the hotel, just that one, because there was 3 buildings, had burned to the ground, no rhyme or reason. They did not know how or why. Burned to the ground. I found out actually a couple weeks after we got back, because things had immediately started happening in our house. I did some research on this place. Turns out back in the 70s, it was called something different. And they did murder mysteries on the weekends, and someone actually got murdered there. I don't know how that ties in, but yeah, that was crazy. And then, yeah, there was things happening in my house, and I actually saw the mother, and she was standing in between my two boys' room, wearing like a black 1800s morning gown with a veil and everything. I only saw her once, but I knew she was there. Um, there was an incident where a little boy, I knew it was a little boy, was trying to play with my son at like 3 in the morning, um, making all of his toys go off. It was crazy. But I did sit down, even though I wasn't even anywhere near on my spiritual journey. I knew some part of me had to know if you tell them to stop, they will stop. But at the time, because I grew up with so much negativity and so much energy around me, I've actually had to go back and reassess some of the incidents that happened to me when I was younger to see if it was actually negative or if it was just me because of the negative space I was in, thinking it was automatically negative. Um, and this was the first time ever, and maybe that's why I had this experience. I don't know, but this was the first time I ever had experience where I wasn't truly afraid. I was afraid of for my kids. I was afraid for my husband. I was afraid of whatever was in him. Um, but I wasn't afraid to confront it. I wasn't afraid to say, "Hey, you need to back off. You need to go away. You need to leave us alone." And of course, I had certain parts of me were fearful for other reasons, and that kind of ratcheted things up. But um, once I saw her in my house when we came back, um, and the little boy was playing with my son's toys in the middle of the night, and all these things started happening, it was like they're letting us know they're here, but they're not here to cause any harm. They're here, and I just knew they were here watching over us. So I sat down and I was like, look, you need to chill out because you're freaking everybody out with we would leave the house, turn all the lights off, come back, all the lights would be on. That happened multiple times, but it was really the first time I sat down and was like, hey, you need to chill, you need to stop. And after that, it did stop. And my husband kind of had a little outburst because we would hear fans going off in the bedroom, and we had a fan that had just a remote control. It didn't have a knob. It had a remote control to change the speeds on it. You could hear the speeds changing in the room. You could hear it shutting itself off, turning itself back on, that kind of thing. And my husband's like, if you're not paying the bills, get out, it kind of thing, joking. And pretty much after that, in the conversation I had, nothing else happened. I have been told, and it's been 9 years, I have been told in the last year and a half by two different psychic readings I've had done that she is still here. She's still with my kids. She's still protecting them from whatever darkness that is potentially rising um, to come at them or whatever. So I think that was pretty cool because I mean, if I can't physically see it, at least she can, and she can be there to watch over my boys. But yeah, that is my brains and story. Um, Let me know what you think below. That's probably the scariest and best ghost story I will ever have. So, hopefully, because I don't want to go through something like that again. It was horrible. Um, and I developed a phobia of the dark from it too, also, in one night. So, yeah, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this one, please subscribe. And don't forget to hit notifications so you can be notified of future videos. Thank you, and you guys have a great and blessed night.